David Williams joins us. David is running for a county commission. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Archie. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. First, give us a little background on you and who you are and where you come from and get started that way.
Absolutely. Happy to. I live in Indian Trail with my wife, Emily, two teenage sons who go to Union County Public Schools. I also have a daughter who's a freshman at NC State. I'm an attorney locally, doing primarily general practice. However, that's a second career for me. Prior to that, I was a registered investment advisor and a stockbroker. I had many decades of a career there. And I grew up in Colorado. I'm not from here originally. My wife has lived in this area her whole life, but I'm not. I grew up in Colorado, try to go back there most summers when the heat gets pretty insufferable.
Yeah. I've flown over, but never been in, just at the airport. The beautiful country out there.
It really is. Rocky Mountain National Park is amazing.
Your law practice is because your background was financial. Is that the type of law you practice, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. It really is more general practice, contracts, business formation, estate planning, some criminal defense. It really is a nice mix of practice areas.
The Democrats want to tax all that.
Yeah, they do. They sure do. It's if it moves, they want to tax it. That's for sure.
So tell me, what experience and skills and so forth would you bring to the job of county commissioner? And first off, why in the world would you want to be one?
Well, that's a question I ask myself more and more increasingly. I start by answering that question really to say that originally, Archie, I had no designs on public office, truly none. I filed on the last day of the filing period and the last hour of the filing period, and it really was just because I had some concerns about the rate hike, the water and sewer rate hike that was voted on by a 3-2 majority of the Board of Commissioners back in December, 33% compounded, and I just thought it was a bit much. And as I started looking into that issue and some of the broader water issues and development issues, I decided I could complain about it or I could be part of the solution and run. So truly that's why I'm running. It's not for any personal design on office. It's to try to serve the people as best I can.
Okay. What are some of the specific items you'd like to accomplish? I would imagine doing away with the Yadkin project.
Yes, Archie, that's been a hot topic for sure in the campaign. I have distinguished myself from other candidates in that I am against the Yadkin project. I don't feel like it's the best means of securing our long-term water sources, nor is it the cheapest mean. And it also comes with a lot of controls and restrictions, a regulatory regime that I think is problematic.
Yeah. The thing that gets me about the Yadkin project, and I'm privileged to serve on some committees where I'm up close and personal with this stuff, and I post stuff that we're told, and sometimes when I do, that gets misconstrued as to, I've not once said I'm for or against this project, but I do know a good bit about it, and have talked with the county staff a lot. It keeps being referred to as a $900 million project, and we're not there yet.
That's true.
We're not there. We're about, it's about a $325 million project. It's assumed that a sewer plant is going to be added to this project. The narrative, the negative narrative is the 33%. And the other one is the commissioners that voted for this must be lining their pockets with developer cash. We've heard it over and over again, okay? A sewer plant is a minimum of 10 years down the road. If this were done for developers, and I'm a developer, I want to put in 500 home tract, I don't want to wait 10 years for my sewer. I want it as soon as I can get it. So that seems to be a problem with me. If this is all being done for developers, they wouldn't see any benefit for 10 years. No land has been secured for a sewer plant. There's tons of environmental and all that would go into it. So I don't know that that's a fair argument, to be honest. Do I think that we'll eventually have a sewer plant tied to the Yadkin? Of course, it's common sense, I think. Just like I think it's common sense that we have one water source, and it's Lancaster, and we can talk about some of the other sources if you like. At some point, we're going to need another water source down the road, whether it's now or in the future. There are 47,000 new people coming to Union County every decade. They're coming. We can't stop them. They're coming. I think eventually we're going to need some more water. Now, when you add the sewer plant to the cost and all the short line extensions and all that stuff, that's when you get up to the $900 million thing. But that's years down the road. This is a project that takes us out to 2050. So we can talk about some of the other. You go ahead.
Well, sure. No, I'd like to address at least a couple of things you mentioned.
Sure thing.
First, the sewer.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. This a new sewer project is not part of the capital appropriations, the capital project ordinances that were voted on in December. That's absolutely true.
Okay.
Land hasn't been acquired for it. But that being said, there was a presentation done to the current Board of County Commissioners back in November. And in that presentation, there was part of that was absolutely a discussion of a Lower Crooked Creek, a new wastewater treatment plant. So there is a plan for that, but it is preliminary. Again, no ordinances have been passed for it. No land has been acquired. And you're right also, Archie, that it does take time for that sort of thing to get rolled out and implemented.
And it hasn't been voted on.
And it hasn't been voted on. That's absolutely right. And to the extent folks are saying we've voted on a $900 million capital project, that's not true yet. That's not true yet. But that being said, there is capacity currently in our wastewater facility to accommodate another round of what I've been calling reckless growth, reckless residential development. At the 12-mile facility, our largest wastewater facility, I believe we're at 55% of capacity. At the Crooked Creek facility, we're at about 65% capacity. So I think the concerns out there about, well, will this new Yadkin source that ratepayers are subsidizing, will this lead to another iteration, another round of development that crowds our roads and fills up our schools? Mm-hmm. Is that a legitimate concern? Yeah, I think it is, because existing wastewater capacity is going to be able to accommodate that, I think.
Well, yeah, but as you know, once you get to 80% capacity, then the state, you get much over 80, and the state, steps in.
You're right.
You will find, they could force you to build another facility.
You're right, Archie, and what you're referring to basically is what's called the 80-90 rule.
Yeah.
When you hit 80% of wastewater capacity usage, the state starts imposing some restrictions on you.
Yeah.
And when you hit 90%, then you're really limited. So we always have to be mindful of where we are in terms of bumping up against those kinds of capacities. I do know at the 12-mile facility, we're in the midst of an expansion there. But you're right. We have to be very mindful of where we are in terms of, those kind of capacity issues.
Yeah. Let's go back to the 33%, because that's a biggie, right? I have met no one that likes the fact that it was 33%, including the people that voted for it. They hate it has to be 33%. The way it's explained to me, the funding model dictates that we need a majority of that money up front to start this project. I said, could it not have been spread out, over 6 years or more to soften the blow? Unfortunately, the funding model wouldn't allow for that. That said, that is a big increase, big number. And I know the arguments, but the thing is, it's not I say this with a caveat. It's not a ton of money. It's $10, $12 a month. For some people, that's a lot of money.
Right.
Okay. For other people, it's Starbucks, it's coffee.
Right.
For other people, they're doing without to pay that higher bill. So granted, that was a big part of it. So there were some other alternatives. There were some dozen that was staff talked with the Board of Commissioners about. Let's talk about a few of those, and we'll start wherever you'd like to.
Sure. Thank you, Archie. And you're right. I first addressed the 33%. No commissioner was thrilled with the commissioners that voted for it. The 3 commissioners that voted for it weren't thrilled with this. They knew that, right or wrong, and I think they're wrong. It was a courageous vote. Let's just be honest about that. But
Well, let me stop just a second. There have been rate increases along the way.
right.
There have also been years when staff recommended like a 4% increase, and previous boards said no. There were years we had no increase at all. So as far as the term kick the can down the road, I believe some of that is true, and county staff would tell you that's true. They knew about this project and have been talking about it since 2004. So I don't know when the rate hikes started, but somewhere along the way, there were some boards that knew that, we're going to need another water source, and they didn't want to be the board to raise your rate 10, 12%, whatever it would have taken back then.
Well, I will say in terms of kicking the can down the road, we've been raising utility rates at a pretty good clip since 2012.
Yeah.
2012, we raised it 7%. 2013, 2014, I think it was 3.5%. But then 2015, it was 6.5%. And it's been a 6.5% increase through 2019.
My point is, prior to 2012, there should have been some increases.
Perhaps.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about alligator water.
Okay.
They can pump 1 billion gallons a day.
Well,
it's a lot of water.
I wouldn't say they can pump 1 billion, but in terms of the resource, the reservoir, the aquifer can recharge at a rate of over 1 billion gallons a day.
It's
so
incredible,
it's basically unlimited water. It's a question of does it make sense as an alternative, and it's one of a couple alternatives that I've talked about.
Okay. They came in, and I don't have the exact figures, but there were some negotiations done between some of the commissioners. Went down and spoke with them, and they came back. I want to say we're paying like 68 cents per 1,000 gallons in Lancaster.
Out of Lancaster, right.
And their proposal was over $6 for 1,000 gallons. And now, since they've come down off of that some, but we're still in the $3 or something range, it's still expensive water.
Right. I'd like to address that if I may.
Absolutely.
Last I heard, I think it was like 260, 270 something per 1,000, but certainly 260, 270 compared to 68 is a difference. My response to that would be twofold. One is we have to look, when we're looking at the expense of water, not just the marginal cost. What does it cost for an additional 1,000 gallons? What's the average cost? Because when you're building a facility like Lancaster or Yadkin, you also have to look at the huge fixed costs, that are a part of building that facility or facilities. Now, with Alligator Water, they've already got a facility there. They can bring water to the state line. Now, of course, we've got to move it from there elsewhere into our system. But the fixed costs for going with Alligator are going to be much lower than the fixed costs for Yadkin or the fixed costs for expanding Lancaster. So we really have to kind of look at apples and apples. What's the average cost for 1,000 gallons over a period of time out of Alligator? What's the average cost for doing it through Yadkin? I guess the other thing I would say there is, when you buy a product, you're willing to pay a little bit more for better quality. With Yadkin and with Lancaster, you're dealing with treated surface water, which is what we use now. With Alligator, with the Middendorf Aquifer, you're dealing with very clean, safe, naturally filtered water that is lightly treated. It tastes better. So, even if it ends up being that the average cost is a little bit more, people can say, well, the quality of the water is better. And indeed, Nestle and Deer Park uses that water, and it's good water.
But it's important to point out that Nestle and Deer Park have their own. They've drilled their own well. They don't get Alligator water.
Right. And that could be an option for us. Maybe instead of buying water through Alligator, we partner with Chesterfield County and build a facility there. Or maybe we expand Lancaster. I mean, one thing that some folks don't realize about Lancaster is this summer we'll be able to draw 40 million gallons a day. Well, the state of South Carolina authorizes a draw of up to 100 million gallons a day out of that facility. So it may make sense to expand Lancaster.
Well, I'll get on Lancaster in a second. They have their own issues. Before we get off of Alligator, there is some infrastructure that would have to be done because we use chlorine to treat our water, and they use chloramines,
Yes.
and the two don't mix.
Yep.
So where they meet, we're going to have whatever type of equipment, plant or whatever to change the water back over to chlorines, I think. The other thing is Alligator wants us to put the pipe and stuff in, but they want to be able to use our infrastructure to sell water to other people.
Other people.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're a financial guy. I got a problem with their financials. They're a nonprofit, right? They lost $881,000 in 2017. 2016, they lost over $1 million. 2015, $288,000 loss. $936,000 loss in 2014. I mean, that is that concerning, or should it not be?
Well, I think you have to look at the bigger picture with Alligator. They've been named Operator of the Year for many years running.
Yeah.
Here's something else to consider. They've been successful, but as a relatively small operator. It may be that if we do end up getting water from Alligator, that we do it not so much as a customer, but maybe we approach the not-for-profit board of trustees that run it. And instead of being a customer, maybe we as Chesterfield's richer, larger neighbor come in and say, hey, we'd like to partner with you. Let's make a capital investment. But in exchange for that, we want to be able to get into your financials. We want to be able to put members of Union County on your board.
Mm-hmm.
So to the extent there are concerns about how it's being run or the financials, perhaps that's a solution. Instead of being a customer, let's be a partner and actually get on the board and become part of that operation. That would be an option.
All right. As far as Lancaster, we're in a 50-50 partnership with Lancaster. So pretty much what we do, they got to be good with as well. So, yeah, I mean, we could go in and pull out 100 million gallons a day, but they don't need that much water. So they're not apt to go in with us to spend the money on the bigger pump and everything that's involved with it. That may be a problem. I mean, just because we need it and we want it doesn't, it's a marriage.
Yep.
With them, and sometimes the wife don't want you to buy that sports car.
That's true. You're absolutely right. The Lancaster facility is a 50-50 deal between Union and Lancaster. So, to the extent decisions are made to expand it, to how the water is distributed, that has to be agreed on by both parties. What I would say in that regard is, and this is something all the candidates and all the current commissioners agree on, pretty much everyone I've talked to has agreed on, that the experience of working together, Lancaster County and Union County, has been great.
Mm-hmm. No doubt.
It's been a fantastic partnership. And when there have been instances where we needed to get more water than our half and lease basically water from Lancaster County, not only have they given that to us, but they've sold it to us at 68 cents for 1,000 gallons a day. So they've basically sold it to us at what we're getting it already for, at the marginal cost. So they've been great partners. I think we can, in confidence, continue those negotiations. If we want to expand the facility, we've got a great relationship. I'm hopeful that as partners that have proven to work well with us, they'll work well with us in an expansion.
Okay. I don't want to run out of time. The water sewer thing is a big topic. Another should be a big topic anyway. Long as I can remember, and I grew up here, there's been a big disparity in our tax revenue coming from residential to commercial. And we've made some great gains. I'm not trying to throw the county under the bus. We've got, the executive airport out there and all that. There's been a lot of new stuff recently. But still, how can we get more? We got a bypass now and so forth. I like to think we're making a lot of gains into attracting more corporate investors.
I think we're on the precipice of doing some great things there. But you're right. We need to do more. The problem is most of our development has been residential, high density, and the balance between residential and commercial has kind of been out of whack. The great thing about commercial, well, there are a number of great things about commercial, as we know. One is that it's development that truly does pay for itself.
Oh, yeah.
You know, in this in public policy arena, we talk about development that doesn't, and most residential doesn't pay for itself in terms of government services, but commercial does. And it also helps us, you know, not just live here in Union County, but work here in Union County, spend our dollars in Union County. And that has benefits in terms of burdening our roads less. And it's a win-win all the way around. So the short of it is, how the heck do we get better and more commercial development?
Yeah, what was troubling is 70% of the people that live here work outside the county.
Exactly.
And that's troubling. We need more
It is troubling.
opportunities for people.
We're largely a bedroom community, I mean, for the most part. So how do we change that?
Yeah.
I think one way we change that is when we add new utility infrastructure, more capacity, water and wastewater. We ought to set aside a reserve for commercial. That's going to be part of the attractive offering that we make to prospective businesses that want to come and talk to us. Because right now, that's not something we can really offer. We build this capacity, and then it gets sucked up by new residential. If we can just reserve part of that capacity for commercial, then that makes it a very compelling kind of smorgasbord of great things that we can offer prospective businesses. For instance, we recently had, I think, phase one of Atrium get roll out in Stallings, and in order for additional phases of those sorts of projects or any attractive commercial projects that we want to bring to Union County, part of that's going to have to be, can we show this reserve of capacity to these prospective businesses?
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention we have a lot of bad wells in the county. If you go through the environmental presentation with our county, they'll show you a map of North Carolina, and they'll put a red dot where all the bad wells are, and Union County is incredible. Now, I'm not a scientist, I'm not an engineer, so there's blame to go around, but we live in a certain belt, shale belt, or whatever they're calling it, which
with arsenic in it.
Yeah, which lends itself to arsenic. There are a lot of bad wells. The county commissioners have voted. They went from $600,000 in their budget for short line extensions to $5 million, and that's ongoing. $5 million a year ongoing. Now, future boards could change that. A step in the right direction. The problem is, if you do the math and you're a numbers guy, it costs $100 a foot to lay water line. And for someone to say, hey, water's a half mile from my house, why can't I? Because it's $250,000.
Yeah.
Taxes don't pay for water sewer. It's just the ratepayers.
It's the ratepayers.
The county would never recoup their investment. That's why you say commercial is so great, because they actually pay.
Exactly.
But what would you say to these people with the bad wells?
Well, what I would say is that it's a public health issue that deserves high priority. I'm a fiscal conservative. My default position is to not spend the people's money. That being said, we have lots of arsenic in these wells. I think you probably know, too. I believe back in January you even talked about this. Union County has the highest incidence of Alzheimer's mortality in the state. That's not a statistic I'm proud of. Okay. Now, I'm not a scientist either, Archie, and I don't know if that's due to the water. I'm not going to, make a conclusion like that, but maybe it does have to do with the water. And I know we have good folks at the Department of Health that are looking into that. But bottom line is, this is a public health issue. This is absolutely the kind of thing, along with emergency services, great police and fire protection, that any good elected official is going to commit resources to. I know I've talked to plenty of folks in Western Union County who don't mind paying more in rates to make sure that their neighbors in the rest of the county have clean, safe drinking water.
Yeah.
I would want to build some sort of consensus before I committed to spend 300 or 400 million, which it might take to extend water countywide. But I'll tell you right now, I'm very much in favor of that sort of action.
Yeah. I think the biggest takeaway, if you're on a well in Union County, you need to have it tested.
Yes. Here, here.
You just really do. About a minute we got left. David, tell folks why they should vote for you.
Well, I'm asking folks to vote for me because I have the background that I feel like will serve us well in Union County. I have a legal and a financial background, which means I'll be able to read and understand contracts, interpret financial statements. I promise to ask very good questions and do my homework. I'm somebody that by nature is just a very dogged researcher. When I look into an issue, I really want to understand it backwards and forwards and sideways. And I don't pretend to come into this role potentially having all the answers or even a huge fraction of them. But I can promise you as a prospective commissioner that I will do my homework, ask great questions, and take the obligation seriously of being a good steward of the county's finances.
One-stop early voting for the March 3rd primary continues until tomorrow at the 7 different locations. I know you've been out at some of those, as many of the candidates have, and on some days when weather wasn't cooperating.
All this red on my face is a testament to the sun I'm getting.
Well, it was nice to meet you.
It's been a pleasure, Archie.
I
Really,
appreciate you. Did we treat you fair?
More than fair. I no complaints whatsoever.
Thank you much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Our Talk of the Town. We'll take a break and be back in a minute.
Hey folks, at Infinite Wellness, you are more than just a number. You're a member of the family because they genuinely want you to feel better. Now, for some people, that problem's going to require chiropractic care. For other people, it's going to be physical therapy. And still for others, they're going to need the regenerative cell therapy. No matter what you need, they're going to approach your problem from every single angle at Infinite Wellness Center with one common goal, and that is for you to feel better. So why don't you call for your consultation today at 704-774-1703. That's 704-774-1703 right here in Monroe. Multiple locations in Charlotte. Mention Shane and mention Wixie.
The exciting RV and boat show season is here at Brown's RV Superstore. Home of the lifetime warranty. You'll find over 300 new and pre-owned RVs, plus a full selection of boats, the nation's top brands. Grand Design, Open Range, Fleetwood, Thor Motor Coach,